Deadman Mode All-Stars was the best one-off event in all of RuneScape's history. On a rainy day in England, on a regular day in England, Solo Mission decided that he wanted to play Deadman Mode with a bunch of other content creators the way that it was meant to be played. No giant clans, no stream sniping, no cheating. And it was going to be an absolute spectacle. So he pitched this idea to Jagex, and they accepted and offered a world and some limited dev time to support it. So the stage was set. 30 content creators would be drafted by captains for a week of degenerate Deadman Mode no-lifing, all leading up to a winner-take-all knockout 1v1 PvP tournament. And the cast was absolutely stacked. Many of the biggest content creators and the best PvPers among the content creators in RuneScape were signed up for the event and locked into play. There were also a few kind of wild cards, more unknowns, who could shake things up and maybe surprise when it came down to the PvP at the end. Hey! This video was brought to you by me, V the Victim. I stream 3 to 4 days a week on twitch.tv/V the Victim. You should come check it out. So let's talk about what made the event so fun, so exciting, and ultimately so successful. First of all, like I mentioned, the cast was incredible. It had so many people who would draw in a bunch of viewers and excitement, and also it was really competitive because there were some great PvPers and PvP content creators specifically in the lineup. So the draft system was excellent. First of all, it was its own event. The draft was hugely hyped up because no one knew who was going to get picked when. Everyone was wondering what the teams would end up being, which would be the most competitive. Would people try to pick the PvPers first, or would they pick people who would grind and get them items and gear? Nobody knew exactly what was going to happen, and even the captains themselves didn't have a great idea of it, and it all unfolded live. And by the time the draft concluded, pretty much every team looked like it could be really strong and compete for the win. Except maybe Bodhi's Burgers, which Bodhi had drafted specifically to be a ton of fun to watch and play in. He basically just picked a group of his friends, and the draft allowed for that, which also was incredible. In addition, there were 6 teams of 5, which made it pretty easy to set up a bracket at the end of the event, but also kept the teams pretty much the perfect size to do things together like God Wars or PK trips, or split up and do separate things to advance the team like long quest lines or long grinds. The format of the event was also perfect. First of all, Deadman Mode is just popular to watch. It always gets a ton of views. It's got high stakes, it's got PVM to get gear, it's got PvP. It's basically one of the best ways to get this holistic experience playing all of the different parts of RuneScape, while also having the excitement of the high stakes, the increased XP, and of course the constant threat of PvP. There are also incredibly rewarding breaches every day, with high-level bosses, lots of PvP, and it brought all the teams together for this one focal point every single day of the, well, not all the teams, we'll talk about that later, but it brought almost all the teams together every single day for this huge focal point that would be another viewer spectacle. And at the end of the week, you have the 1v1 tournament. One team versus one team, send out a fighter, winner stays on, and the last team standing wins. 1v1 Tribrid PvP is the absolute pinnacle of skill in RuneScape, and it's something that we've been robbed of from Deadman Mode. Recently, 1v1s have been removed from the Deadman Mode tournaments, the public ones, because people cheat. People have been DDoSing, people have been sharing accounts. There's a lot of stuff people can do that made Jagex remove them, and I don't blame them. But it really takes away from a lot of the excitement of Deadman Mode when that ultimate 1v1 tournament goes off and one person is left standing. So All-Stars brought that back. And not only did it bring it back, but those people that are involved in this are all popular, well, I mean, I was in it, but almost all popular content creators, a lot of really good PvPers, and you just get this huge culmination to the whole week of all these multi-fights, all this gearing and bossing, getting the prayers, getting the weapons, getting the special attacks, and you just have this huge tournament right at the end that everyone wants to see. And at the end, you get that one team, the best team, or the luckiest team. I'm a little biased, but the best team left standing at the end. And it really is just the perfect draw and the perfect way to close out this tournament. I also want to throw a mention to the 120-hour playtime cap that was instituted for the tournament. Now, for people like Alfie or Mazar, who could play 36 hours straight and then sleep 3 hours and do it again, this wasn't necessarily a good thing. I think they were a little upset by it, but overall for the tournament, I think it was an incredibly good thing because ultimately, I think pretty much every single person played close to the cap. I enjoyed the event so much that I just saw 120 hours as doable if I just gave up sleep, which I did. And I think that overall it was incredible for the tournament that so many people could reach the cap, and it left the teams on a pretty even playing field where it was up to skill and some RNG rather than just being about how much you could grind, which is traditionally a pretty big part of RuneScape in general, but not one of the most exciting parts about it, in my opinion at least. But like I said, I played the cap after estimating playing way less at the beginning of the week. Guns Chili, my teammate, did. Odablock, our captain, did. Our whole team pretty much played down to within an hour or two of the cap. And I think that almost every team was like that. Pretty much the whole event, everyone came together, played a stupid degenerate amount, and it created so much content. It created so much hype, consistency throughout the week. There was always somebody live to tune into. I mean, really every single part of the format of the event was almost perfect. And I'll talk about the downsides later, but I just think Solo Mission did such a great job of setting this up, and the support of Jagex and all the creators working together to make this thing a huge event was incredible. One other thing I forgot to mention was the stream sniping rule. So technically, stream sniping was allowed in Deadman All-Stars, but it was only because it couldn't be policed. So I think in general, the idea was everyone knows stream sniping will really ruin the event. Don't do it, but technically it can't be against the rules because we won't know if you're doing it. There was quite a bit of drama related to stream sniping during the event, but I think honestly that it was overblown. So the majority of it was between Odablock on my team and Dino and West Ham on Dino's team. And I think that there probably was very little actual stream sniping. Ultimately, the only stream sniping I think happened in any big way during the entire event was people from each streamer's chat going and watching the other stream and then coming back to chat and trying to say, oh, they're doing this, they're here, don't go here, something like that. And I think that at some point as a streamer, you have to do a better job than was done sometimes during the event of timing people out or banning or whatever people who stream sniped and were giving information to the streamer. But I think overall, there was a good faith effort made by pretty much everyone in the competition pretty much all the time to avoid stream sniping. I think the drama was really overblown. I don't think stream sniping was actually a big issue at all. And I think that if the event was run back exactly the same with exactly the same people, we'd get another really fun, fair event. And don't just take it from me that it was successful, because I got numbers for you. So, well, I don't have a green screen, but I'm gonna slide to the side because I got graphs. So we got a graph from one of the JMods afterwards showing that basically throughout the entire week, the viewership on the Old School RuneScape category on Twitch was triple baseline. So throughout the week, even at the down hours, someone was live, people were watching, and we got triple the normal viewership for pretty much the entire 168-hour period during the week of the competition. And then for the finale, it went to 10 times its normal amount. We got to 10 times the normal viewership. And this means probably that it's not even just RuneScape players watching. It's such a big event with so many content creators that you have people that don't even watch RuneScape getting sucked into this thing and maybe getting interested in the game. Maybe they'll play Deadman mode. Maybe they'll watch more content in the future. It's really only good. And not only that, but we got Odablock, Q-second graph. There we go. But Odablock was the #1 viewed stream on Kick that week. Period. More than XQC, more than any other big name. And granted, he streamed more than they did too, because we were all psychopaths playing 120 hours in a week. But an old school RuneScape streamer being #1 on any platform is unheard of. Old School is a well-known game, it's pretty popular, but compared to the big dogs, we're never anywhere near the top. So to see Oda streaming exclusively RuneScape, being the #1 viewed channel on a platform, is unreal. And it just speaks more to how incredibly huge this event actually was. And the rest of this is anecdotal, but every time I got on the Old School subreddit Every time I was on my Twitter, there were clips, there were discussions, there was talk about the format, there was speculation about who was going to win. Everybody had some opinions, and everybody's eyes were on this event. Even the haters they felt the need to talk about it because it was the only thing that mattered going on that week. And it was, in my opinion, absolutely incredible. And like we saw with the viewership, it was wildly successful. But All-Stars definitely wasn't perfect. I came up with a few things that I thought could have been better, and I hope to see some of them implemented if there is another All-Stars in the future. Breaches. They were the once-a-day pinnacle of the event, a massive opportunity for group PvP, and they were so rewarding that no team could possibly avoid attending them. Right? Except one team, the Faux Kekonas, never killed a single breach monster. They showed up to a couple as some just 1v1 singles PKers and got a couple kills, but really didn't end up with any benefit from the breaches. While I think their strategy was flawed, and the results of the tournament did show that, I would like to see a guaranteed reward from every breach. Picture this. After 15 minutes of bosses spawning and everyone killing them, hoping for some luck, a giant chest appears where the breach was. The first person to open the chest gets some crazy loot, whether it's a prayer scroll or a VLS, something that would take a lot of time and effort to get otherwise. That person is given a unique PK skull, maybe like the red one from the Tazar fight pit, that's super easy to see and shows that they've got huge risk on them, and they immediately become the kill target for every other team in the game. A system like this would take a lot of RNG out of getting the best loot because, for example, my team had really bad luck with PvP weapons. It would also cause more PvP, making the events a lot more exciting to watch, and it would make attending the breaches pretty much mandatory unless you had a really, really good alternative to be spending your time on. Another change I would have liked to see with the breaches is that to get a PvP weapon drop, you should have had to be skulled. During All-Stars, objectively the best way to play the breaches was to show up unskulled, try to play as safely as possible, and just farm bosses as much as possible. If you did get a drop, especially a VLS or a Zoriel's staff, you could instantly teleport out because you're unskulled, with no risk, get to a safety deposit box, throw it in the bank, and then just have it completely safe for the rest of the week until the finale. There's pretty much no risk involved. I think forcing players to skull would make the gameplay a lot more fun and exciting, while also making it a more intense and interesting viewer experience. I actually mentioned this to Solo Mission too at one of the last breaches, and he was like, yeah, I agree. So hopefully if we see another All-Stars, this will be a change that we do see implemented. Finally, I think breaches needed to only be in complete multi-combat areas with no singles nearby. A few locations, like the one in southern Hosidius on the beach, or the one in the northern wilderness, north of Black Chins, have a single strip so close that you can stand there and hit the bosses and get the chance at really good PvP loot without ever setting foot into multi unless you're going to loot the item. And at least in this Deadman mode, you didn't have to be skulled to get weapons. So you could get a VLS, sprint in, grab it, teleport out before anyone gets on you. Boom, no risk at all. So I think breaches like the one north of the Boneyard were really good because there's probably at least a 30 or 40 tile buffer in every direction where it was multi. And really the multi PvP, the teamwork and all that, I think are what made the breaches so interesting, even though they weren't perfect. So I'd like to see more of that. And I think having a single strip nearby is definitely something that harms that more than helps it. Aside from the breaches, I think the penalty for dying during the week was too steep. And it especially would be if my changes were implemented. For anyone who doesn't know, 4 PvP deaths during the week meant you lost one of your 10 anglerfish during the final. There definitely needs to be some punishment for death other than just dying, because otherwise people would run around naked doing quests and stuff with no risk. But I think the penalty definitely discouraged PvP more than encouraging it. Plus, it's the less skilled PvPers who are more likely to die, and those are the people who need their food the most to make the final interesting. I think the ideal forfeit for death would be something that was probably team-based, maybe do total deaths across the whole team, or if a certain person dies X number of times, they have to maybe alka-good drop or something. I think that punishing the worst players for dying the most, which is what's almost inevitably going to happen, is probably not the best way to do this system. But I have to admit that I don't have a ready-made solution for this one. That said, I think my complaints are pretty minimal, honestly, and ultimately the event was designed incredibly well, and I could tell from the first second that I read Solo Mission's rules posts and all the other stuff in the Discord that he really cared about it and put a ton of thought into this. And I think it showed. I think the event was designed extremely well overall. All right, and for the last part of the video, I just want to talk a little bit about my experience during the week. This is probably what people have asked me the most about, and because I only streamed a couple times all week and didn't end up making a YouTube video from it, I really wanted to give my perspective on some stuff, and hopefully this is what the people who have been asking about it are looking for. First of all, I just want to say that the event was kind of hell on my body and brain. I think some of the other competitors can definitely relate, but especially for me, this isn't my full-time job. It's not even my job at all. So I have a 45 hour a week job that I work outside of RuneScape and content creation. And this week, I took 2.5 out of the 6 days off of work. So in total, the event was 173, of course, hours long, and I ended up playing 119 of them. And then I ended up working 30. So I only had 24 hours in a little over 7 days to sleep, eat, exercise, and do everything else, which is, 3.5 hours a day. I was a shell of myself the entire time, but it's crazy because despite that, I still had an absolute blast. Even when I was delirious at Zamorak trying to get Staff of the Dead drops at like 3 a.m. with Oda and Chili and Cold One, I still was having a ton of fun despite being pretty much not there at all mentally. So really my takeaway there is just I would take the entire week off work. I hope there's another one of these. I hope I cop an invite, but I tell you what, the first thing I'm doing if I do is accepting it and then immediately requesting every single day off of work because I do not want to do what I did this time over again. But despite that, my team was there for me. The Oda Block Warriors, we got Oda, my captain, Reese, bit of a co-leader, Cold One, PVM specialist, and Chili, the glue that held the team together. Looking back, I definitely would not trade them for any other team, but I will concede things were not always perfect. Really, a couple weeks out, we started planning our early game, and I think that it paid off insanely. We were really quick to getting prayer. We had overheads, ranged overheads, and bone crossbows. We rushed to zombie pirates, we cleared people, and we absolutely crushed it. But we also ended up overstaying. I ended up dying. I think Oda also ended up dying. And after that, we had to jump straight into the rest of our plan of getting magic levels, doing Monkey Madness. And once we got past a certain point, probably the first breach, I would say, we really ran out of stuff that we had planned. So whenever we hit a bump in the road, we kind of just crashed back down to earth and didn't have a perfect direction for where we were all going to go next. And speaking of bumps in the road, I didn't realize ahead of the week that I basically was going to need to be a hostage negotiator on behalf of my teammates whenever Reese and Oda were fighting. These two are probably two of the 3 best PKers in the entire competition. Reese was the first pick of the whole thing, and it was because of how good of a PKer he is. And then Oda, our captain, was definitely the best PKer out of the captains. Unfortunately, sometimes with great skill comes a bit of ego. And when you have 2 people who are both very good and both have a bit of an ego, they can clash sometimes. As you all may know, they had so many disagreements that we ended up calling the basement of the Warriors Guild the Hookah Lounge, because every time something went wrong, usually it was one of them dying during a breach, they would just immediately start yelling at each other, drop a voice channel in Discord away from the team, go to the Warriors Guild to AFK their combats, and just argue, like endlessly. That meant while mom and dad were fighting, the rest of us, who didn't really have any explicit plan, had to pick up the pieces, re-gear anyone else who died, and figure out what on earth we were going to do next. On the bright side, this is when we could always count on Cold One to either blast out Slayer or Raids or some other high-level PVM. Guns Chili would just do literally anything we needed, which is exactly why he was the glue of the team. And I tried my best to fill in wherever I could too. So I think we did a really good job of it, but it was a bit of a struggle for sure. Some of those days where the arguments dragged on in the hookah lounge and maybe we needed a little more help with something else. And yeah, there was one point where they were arguing and Guns Chili really needed something from one of them. And he was like, look, he was getting upset and he was like, I gotta get in there. We need to be working as a team. We need to be progressing. The final's almost here. So he goes into the voice channel and one of them, I think it was Reese, immediately moved him back into our voice channel when he tried to go talk to them. And he was so mad. I honestly, Guns Chili is like super level-headed, super chill. I think in general would never hurt a fly. And he was steaming coming out of his ears. No, this is ridiculous. Like, oh man. And so again, with the hostage negotiator, like conflict resolution, I was just trying to, keep things chill and calm. And fortunately, they ended up working it out and everything was fine and we moved on. But probably a highlight and low light of the week, I think, was the conflict between Oda and Reese, because sometimes it was really, really funny. And sometimes it was like, guys, we all really want to win this, which is why you're yelling at each other and you're not helping right now. And speaking of that, we actually got some of the greatest content, which was Oda and Reese duoing raids. They actually stepped up to help us get prayer scrolls because we really needed them from raids. And what that meant was them both duoing raids because neither were super comfortable soloing. And man, they kept arguing the entire time they were in there. It was so funny. We were just sitting there, especially Cold One, who's really good at raids, and they're just screaming at each other, and we're just sitting there laughing our asses off. And honestly, props to them for, despite having a lot of differences and clashes with their egos and what they thought we should have been doing as a team during breaches or during the week or whatever, they managed to still work together really well, and they were still really solid teammates. And I think those raids were both an example of how hilarious it could be that they were arguing, while also being an example of them being good teammates and stepping up and doing something like raids that we needed. One other honorable mention for the week is our RNG. I can put up some photos that Jagex shared of how many drops people got and how many like raids points people earned and everything. Our luck during the week was abysmal. Like, we went to Zami to try to farm up Staff of the Dead to have a good mage attack weapon with a special bar for at least Oda and Reese. We were there for, I want to say, like 8 hours maybe as a 3-4 man. And we got like 7, 8, 9 Zamorak Hilts, which are the same exact drop rate as Staff of the Dead. We never got a single Staff of the Dead. We were dry at Barrows. We were dry at raids. We never got an augury from me. I ended up doing the finals without an augury. We were, I think, like 3 times as unlucky as Dino's team at breaches for items there for PvP weapons. We had a rough time throughout the week in RNG. And I think that while it was really frustrating, it also was another kind of team building thing where we could just, every single time another Zamorak Hilt came out, we were together in our misery of how bad our luck was. And I think that a small highlight of the tournament was, it was late at night. Oda was losing his mind with our garbage RNG as we sort of I tried to like keep the spirits a little bit high. I ended up getting him to play a Chinese song on stream. I gave him a thing to put into Google Translate that would show him how to say it. And he was trying to beg Krill, the Zamorak boss, in Chinese to give us a Staff of the Dead. And it was one of the funniest things I've ever heard. So there were a couple of silver linings, I think, in the garbage RNG. But I also would have really liked to just have gotten the drops we wanted in a reasonable amount of time. But it is what it is. Definitely worth a mention because it had a huge effect on the week and the final. And speaking of the final, that's probably about all I have left to talk about. So let's go ahead and move on to that. On Saturday morning, before the final, both Oda and Reese, especially Oda, who hopped on early, got on to help me, Chili, and Cold One practice our PvP, which was absolutely massive. There are a lot of things in PvP that are obvious, like put on the right gear, try to one-tick your special attack, put on the right prayer to protect against what your opponent is using. But there are a lot of small things that you don't necessarily intuit if you're not a good PKer. Like a good example would be if you're standing underneath somebody and you want to get 2 hits in and only allow them to get 1 on you, you could like step out and use a fast weapon like a whip to get a 4-tick hit in. And then they'll hit you with, say, a crossbow, which is a 5-tick. So you can hit with your 4-tick, walk back out, because you only have to wait 4 ticks to hit again, and they have to wait 5. So if you hit them right away on your second attack and then walk straight back under, they don't have the chance to hit you again. I guess I kind of intuitively knew that, but that was something that specifically Oda and Reese were saying, you can do this. And I actually used it a couple times when I was playing well at the end of the fights to really get in an extra 15, 20, 30 damage sometimes. And it makes a big difference. So stuff like that was huge. And it showed how good of teammates Oda and Reese were, at least when they weren't arguing with each other. So that was super cool. It was super cool to get a private PvP lesson from some of the best PKers in the game right before the finals. And I think it helped our team tremendously, as you could see from, say, Guns Chili's performance, because he ended up doing insanely well, even though he was on pretty high ping in an unfamiliar setup. So on to the final itself, I played like garbage. For the first 4 rounds or so, I think, I pretty much did really badly in all of my fights. I mean, I got specced out by Mr. Mammal with a corrupt AGS when I had food left. I lost really badly to Port Khazard, although I was outgeared and he's a really good player. But I lost badly in that one where we lost to the Solo Snakes and got demoted to the lower bracket. And then I think I had another couple of pretty bad fights. But fortunately, I did redeem myself, I would like to think, because we got into the semifinals against the Solo Snakes in a rematch, and I actually beat Port Khazard in an even fight with him having augury over me and way, way better gear, including a VLS. I was really proud of that one. And then immediately after that, we got into the finals, and that was really exciting. I felt like we had a very good chance, and I ended up against West Ham, who had only 4 food left when I had 9 and a brew. And he made me use all of my food just to take 4 of his food away. So 9 of my food and a brew for 4 of his. And I finally killed him with, I think I had 31 health left. And I was up against Dino, who is also a PKer, who's, very respectable. He's solid. And I was like super disappointed in myself. Everybody's like, oh, good job. You killed West Ham. And I was like, yeah, but I got smoked. And then I proceeded to use 6 of Dino's food on 31 health. So I was so proud of myself. I hit like 3 redemption flicks to keep alive. And I basically completely feel like I redeemed my original performances. I got carried really early on by my team. I played really badly. But then when it mattered the most, I stepped up and I played really well. And that was super exciting. Ultimately, we did lose. And that was really disappointing. But man, I hate to cope, but we had horrible, horrible RNG. If you went back and watched the Oda fight and you looked at, actually, he probably has a video of his tracker on his channel. I think he does. And I might have to go watch that myself. But man, the splashes were unreal. The hits were zeros off prayer constantly. And I really feel like we could have pushed it to the last match. Because if we'd won that fight there, we would have had one more fight to decide the champion. And I definitely think we deserved to get that fight. And the game just slapped us down and said no. But overall, super happy with my performance. Incredibly happy with my team. I think they all played so well. They were such great teammates. Guns Chili especially just stood out. He was the last pick in the entire competition. And he ended up being not only an insane range tank in the final, but the amount of stuff he did for us during the week was unreal. Like, he said he was only going to play, I think, 6 to 8 hours or something in the poll that Solo Mission put out before the draft. And he ended up capping. He ended up playing 120 hours that week. And he did Dragon Slayer 2 late in the week out of nowhere to carry us to Dragon Crossbows and Dragon Bolts. I mean, anytime a quest needed to be done or something needed to be gathered or smelted or crafted or anything, he was just on it. It was unreal. Like, Guns Chili was such a good teammate, and I'm so stoked I got to play with him. Cold One was awesome. Odo and Reese were awesome. Like, I had such an incredible week playing All-Stars, and I'm super grateful that I got the invite. I'm really grateful to the support that a lot of you have shown.
I mean, heck, I even I streamed once and I had like hundreds of people show up even though I hadn't been streaming at all. And I even had a guy give me like $50 just randomly the weekend after when I hadn't streamed in days, and he was like, "Yo, loved you guys on All Stars. Like, thanks for the entertainment." Like, insane. And so, yeah, I just really, really enjoyed it. I love the team. I had so much fun. The event was incredible. Solo put his heart and soul into it. Jagex supported it. All Stars is up there with the Inferno release, with the Theater of Blood release, with getting invited to Gielinor Games and playing in that as my one of my favorite times in old school history. It's been out almost 12 years, and that is some high praise because I have had a lot of incredible moments in this game. I hope you all enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed playing in it. I really had fun making this video and looking back on some of the moments, thinking about all the times we had, watching some clips. And if you have any questions or comments about anything that happened during the week, want to have a conversation about it, whatever, just let me know. I'd love to talk more about All Stars, and I'm really hoping that it won't be that long before we see All Stars make a return. Thank you for watching. I hope to see some of you all over on Twitch. I'll put the details somewhere and also in the description. Been streaming 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And yeah, I just really appreciate all the support. I'm so grateful I got to be part of this incredible event, and I hope it happens again.